Man, wow. How you doing, ATU? Hey, how you doing, ATU? Man, y'all about half asleep, aren't you? Come on, how you doing today? And let me ask you something. Are you fired up? Let me hear you say fired up one time. Oh, come on. You got out of bed a minute ago? Let me hear you say fired up one time. One more time. Let me hear you say fired up. Woo, let me hear you one more time. My goodness, that introduction I got, the best thing for me to do is wave and go on home. Because it probably can't get much better than that. I want to thank the President for that wonderful introduction. Thank my Secretary-Treasurer. I want to thank the Executive Vice President. I want to thank my dear friend, Warren George. But I want to also thank you. And I want to say, as humbly as I can, I am moved by this opportunity. Long ways from my home in Cabin Creek, West Virginia. Anybody from West Virginia here? I know we got members from ATU in West Virginia. Anybody from the South in here? Goodness. Anybody talk like me out there? Let me just say that I know that our unions go back many years. You had a early president that stayed like 45 years. I believe his name was Bill Mahone. And he was a dear friend to a UMWA president named John L. Lewis. I think President Mahone was your president for 45 years. John L. Lewis was our president for 40 years. So they were friends and served together and fought together to build a middle class in this country. So we go back 1890 for us and 1892 for you. Contrary to popular belief, I wasn't there when the union was formed in 1890. There's a lot of people think I've been around that long. But here we are, 18 years later, and we're still standing up and fighting back. And for those who believe the labor movement is dead, they are in for a rude awakening, because I know you're not going to let that happen. You're going to stand up and fight back and keep what we've built over these many, many years. If you don't mind, I do the best in the back of a pickup truck, but, you know. How many of you remember a president of your union named Dan Maroney? Dan was from the same place I'm from. I'm from Cabin Creek, West Virginia. And in case you don't know what that is, it's a holler up West Virginia, between two mountains, a couple hundred yards wide, roads 15 miles long. And off of that holler, 15 miles long, we've had 3 international presidents, 2 UMWA presidents, myself and Arnold Miller and Dan Maroney. Something in that water is doing all right, my friends. That's it. And may I say a few words about my dear friend Warren George. I understand now he's a movie star. That you had a movie, and he was telling me about that. He says, I may have to get in SAG. He said, Cecil, Screen Actors Guild. He said, because they produced a movie and I was the star of it. But he was very humbled by that. I've known Warren for many years, and let me tell you how I first met him. I met him about 8 years ago, and I was having a conversation with him, and he looked at me and like he was confused. And after a while, he said, boy, where are you from? I said, well, why do you ask? He said, that accent you've got, I just got to tell you, I can't understand a word you're saying. I said, accent? Who knew? I said, I don't have an accent. He said, oh, well, I got to tell you, he said, You ever watch that show, Green Acres? You're saying, you sound just like Mr. Haney on Green Acres. And I thought, boy, Warren George doesn't mind hurting a man's feelings here. And I said to him, let me understand something for you, buddy. I said, I don't have an accent. I said, God talks just like me. And if you don't believe that, wait till y'all get up to the pearly gates. And old St. Peter says, y'all come on in here. We get in the pickup truck momentarily and take you to the big house. Now, you just wait and you'll see that I'm right about that. Boy, it's a crazy time we're living in. When you think about it, we're all mad and we're all frustrated. But I go back to 1989 forward, and we talked about the relationship that we've had for many, many years. But I remember during the Pittston strike, when we were on strike for 10 and a half months, we got fined $64 million, by the way. 4,000 people went to jail. I remember the ATU stood proud with us and fought beside us, shoulder to shoulder, walking the picket lines, coming to our rallies. Then the Greyhound strike came, and right after we signed the contract, and I was privileged to speak at a rally in Charleston, West Virginia called Rally in the Valley. And we stood beside you, and as you fought Greyhound for a fair and decent contract. Then I believe it was about 93 when some of your people got in trouble up in New England, got sued under RICO, and the union, the ATU, couldn't pay those fines, and the United Mine Workers came with $10,000 and paid those fines, because that's what solidarity is about. You know, solidarity is not a river flowing one way. Solidarity is an ocean where we all are part of that. And I look at what struggles you're going through as you stand beside us, as we fight for mine health and safety. We stand with you to fight to make the transit workers' jobs safer, particularly in areas like Washington, D.C. And we stand with you at the AFL-CIO in those fights, and we will continue to do that. But let me tell you, we also stand with you to secure federal funding to make sure every transit worker in the United States and Canada who wants a job has a job. If we can bail out Wall Street, we can bail out the transit workers in this country. We are faced in some troubling times, and we're all angry. We're angry at everybody, I assume. The voting public's angry. But we are in the midst of a situation where some decisions are going to be made. We could end up losing Speaker Pelosi and getting Speaker Boehner. Have you ever seen an orange man before? Now, this is something. We elected the first African American in 2008, and people are proposing we elect the first orange man this year or next year when I say no to this kind of representation on Capitol Hill. Things get curiouser and curiouser. You know, we're in Disney World, and I guess that's a perfect thing for me to say. Newt Gingrich is back. Can you imagine that Newt wants to be president? You know, a few years ago, we built a train. Midnight train to Georgia, and we put his big fat ass on it and shipped him out of Georgia. Now he's back. Now, George Bush, do you know what he's doing now? What I'm doing. He's a motivational speaker. Now, the next thing, Lindsay Lohan's going to be a guidance counselor, but that's the way it works. But let me tell you what's been happening to us. I'm going to do something right here with the chair's indulgence. You know, this microphone doesn't come free. I know how I got this microphone. I know I live in the greatest country on earth. I've got freedom of speech and freedom of assembly like you're participating in this morning. But I would like all the veterans in this hall to stand and receive a round of applause. But that's why I get to do what I do. I'm a proud veteran, 196, Light Infantry Brigade, Marical Division. Give these veterans a round of applause. Come on, get with it. I would point out that if this was a Chamber of Commerce meeting, there wouldn't be that many people standing. But you know what's happened to us? Rush Limbaugh, who never went anywhere, he's a patriot. Newt Gingrich, who never went anywhere, he's a patriot. Hannity never went anywhere, he's a patriot. Let me tell you, friends, brothers and sisters, when the wars take place, whether World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam, or Mideast, it's the working class that fights those wars. We should not take a back seat to any of these right-wing nuts telling us how to be a patriot. Let me tell you what else we shouldn't be doing. We have lost ground because the people on the other side who oppose us have taken the Bible and they've pointed it at us and they've waved it at us and every once in a while they thump it at us. Let me tell you something. We don't have to take a back seat to anybody, because the principles this movement was built on, are found in the Bible. The Bible says we're going to be judged someday by how we treat the least of these. And the labor movement has stood up time and time again to lift our brothers and sisters out of poverty, has stood up time and time again to stand for Social Security, Medicare. Our basic premise is found in the Bible itself. So we know we're the patriots. We know we believe in God with a fierce reverence. So how is it we find ourselves in these predicaments? I suggest to you it's because, as the old labor song goes, we've been quiet for too long now. We have been quiet for too long now. This union that I come from, we've seen tragedy beyond belief. We have seen it since the day we were formed. We've seen it at Ludlow when thugs killed our women and children on strike in 1914. We have seen it when we retaliated and killed them on the streets of Matewan. We have seen it as our leaders were gunned down at the courthouse in Welch. Yes, we led the greatest armed insurrection in this country against the employers and the state government who was on their side in 1921 at Blair Mountain. But we have always stood for the premise that no worker should be enslaved, that red, yellow, black, or white, we're all precious in God's sight. Before you go to bed tonight, 14 workers somewhere in America will die. on the job. 7 days a week, every day of the week, 14 workers are killed. 5,200 a year. I'm going to tell you what's going on here. No one wants to talk about that, but we do. I submit to you that if a boss, whether it's on a bus line, a train, or a coal mine, or a factory floor, tries to put a worker in a dangerous situation, that worker should have a right to look that boss in the eye and say, "Kiss my ass." It was mentioned by your president about the Upper Big Branch mine, and let me speak briefly to that. 29 miners died there needlessly. And people said, "Why, that was a non-union mine. Why do you care?" Well, we're all God's children to start with. That's one thing. And I believe everybody needs a union. These workers desperately needed a union. I knew these men. The youngest miner there was Corey Davis, 20 years old. He had a red hat. Red hat just means you don't have 6 months in yet. You're not certified as a miner yet. He died. He cut my mother's grass for years. His grandparents lived beside my mother. My mother's 91. They've lived beside my mother for 40-some years. She still has his picture on her refrigerator. Timmy Davis was 51. Timmy was Corey's uncle. Timmy and I were friends. Timmy and I played ball together. Timmy died beside Corey. Josh Napper was the son of another Davis daughter. Josh Napper was 25. He did not have a red hat. He left a letter to his mother and to his fiancée and to his little 2-year-old daughter. It said, "If I get killed in this mine, please tell everyone I love them." Now, I think that if a 25-year-old young man who's not yet a miner knows he's working in a dangerous place, it appears to me that Don Blankenship, the CEO of that company, the biggest union buster, violates every law coming and going, hosted a year ago that big Labor Day celebration with all those right-wing nuts down in Logan County. You probably saw him on TV with a red, white, and blue shirt on, talking about how we don't need anyone telling us how to run these mines. He knew how to keep them safe, and then Upper Big Branch happens. I submit to you, if a young man wrote that letter, and by the way, those are the kind of letters we used to write when we were going to Vietnam, when we were going to World War II or Korea or the Mideast. I submit to you that's not the letter any worker in this country ought to be writing when they're going to get their dinner bucket, going out the door, and kissing everybody goodbye. And I also submit to you that these CEOs it's time for them to be held accountable, and I'm not talking about a fine. I'm talking about taking their ass and locking them up and putting them in jail and not letting them out. Mother Jones, though, tells us, pray for the dead, fight like hell for the living. So that's where we find ourselves this morning. America is a government of the people and by the people and for the people. Sometimes we forget who the people are. They look at us like we're not the people. Who are we? Well, I submit to you that we're ATU, for one thing, that moved this nation. We're the letter carriers who connected the nation. We're the farmers that fed the nation. We're the school teachers who taught the nation. We're the nurses that healed the nation. We're the construction workers who built the nation. We're the auto workers who also helped move this nation. We're the coal miners that energized this nation. We're the police officers who protected this nation. The labor movement is America. Now, we don't need a bailout. We don't need a handout. We can fix this problem. The American labor movement can fix it. That's what we can do. Just give us what we had in 1935. That is the right to organize the unorganized, and we'll fix this problem for you. Do you want a safer workplace? Join a union. You want higher pay? Join a union. You want health care? Join a union. You want better pensions? Join a union. You want a voice at work? Join a union. You want to rebuild America? Join a union. You want a fairness in the workplace? Join a union. You want a healthier workplace? Join a union. You want to eliminate poverty? Join a union. You want more democracy in the workplace? Join a union. You want a better America? Join a union. You just want to tell a boss that kicks your ass? Join a union. Now I got to tell you something. None of this is going to happen here. I believe this union, just like the civil rights movement, was best when it was out in the street, marching and picketing and raising pure hell for our demands and what we want. There's nothing wrong with marching, because let me tell you, John L. Lewis marched, Mother Jones marched, Dr. King marched, Gandhi marched, Jesus marched, Cesar Chavez marched, and Moses marched. Let me tell you something. Moses didn't get everybody together and say, we better send a fax to Pharaoh. You better send Pharaoh an email. Moses went up and saw Pharaoh and said, let my people go. We need to start just like we did in the 30s. It doesn't make any difference what union you're in. Just have the same singular purpose. Get in fire for what you believe. Just like in a church. Then we're going to say, ain't nobody going to turn us around. Ain't no Glenn Beck going to turn us around. Ain't no Rush Limbaugh going to turn us around. Ain't no Bill Riley going to turn us around. Ain't no Don Blankenship going to turn us around. Ain't no Newt Gingrich or Sarah Palin going to turn us around. Ain't no courthouse going to turn us around. Ain't no jailhouse going to turn us around. Ain't nobody going to turn us around. And then, in the words of Dr. King, someday we can say, free at last, free at last,